With population growth, job growth, and a diverse economy, it's no wonder people love investing in Denver. And on the flip side, you have a really cool food and drink scene, a lot of cool events, and you got the mountains within 30 minutes of Denver. So with that being said, there is no doubt that Denver is a growing city. Ask the locals that have been here for like 10 plus years or even 5 plus years, and they'll tell you that Denver is not what it used to be. And that might be for better or for worse in their opinion, of course. But knowing all of this, investors want to capitalize on the growing demand of owning land here in the greater Denver area. And the best way to do this is to invest in real estate. And there are a ton of ways to make money while investing in real estate, but one of the best strategies to squeeze out as much income as possible on these properties is through short-term rentals. Now, what exactly is a short-term rental? What it is renting out a piece of the home, an ADU, a garage, a basement even, for less than 30 days at a time. And I actually go through a bunch of different scenarios or different strategies with the long-term, medium-term, and short-term rentals are like here in the greater Denver area. So make sure you go check that out in my library of videos to help you invest in Denver. However, with these short-term rentals, there are a lot more regulations in the greater Denver area, so you're going to be running into some issues. But that's okay. That's why you're here watching this video, so that I can tell you what those rules and regulations are throughout the greater Denver area. I'm here to shed some light on what is allowed here in the greater Denver area, what is not allowed, and also some earning potential as shown through AirDNA. And make sure you stick around to the end of the video, because I'm gonna have a really cool tidbit on investing in the actual city of Denver without that short-term rental regulation, so make sure you stick around for that. So with that being said, in no particular order, let's start out with the city of Lakewood. The city of Lakewood is located in the southwest portion of Denver, and it's one of the bigger cities located within the greater Denver area. And with it being so big, there's a lot of diverse communities, and if you just go like a couple blocks away from a certain property, you might not get the attractiveness of that original neighborhood. So what I mean by that is talk to a professional, and I would love to help you out in that regard. The city of Lakewood has the same short-term rental laws throughout the whole city, and it doesn't look that great for people who want to invest in the city of Lakewood, because they're just not allowed in general in that area. So with that being said, let's move on to the next area. And let's move on to the city of Centennial. And it attracts a lot more people that want that suburb feel. However, within Centennial is DTC, the Denver Tech Center, which attracts a lot more of the urbanites and people that are in that corporate or tech scene. And you can get some really cool places to eat, drink, and be merry. So Centennial does allow short-term rentals in the area, so let's take a look at some of the regulations. STRs, or short-term rentals, are allowed in Centennial, and you're allowed to have 2 maximum people per bedroom. So if you have a 4-bed house, you can have a maximum of 8 people living in that home. And there are some duties as an owner to let the neighborhood know that you're operating a short-term rental in there. And also you need to notify that the guests coming in, there's a post showing all the neighborly rules and regulations with the Centennial area. And all of the adjoining properties, including the ones across the street, need to be notified that there is a short-term rental within a vicinity of their home. Now, I won't get into the really detailed specifics of that, but just let me know if you have any questions regarding that. Now, looking at AirDNA, a lot of the numbers are looking pretty decent for the Centennial area. Potential revenue is up from last year, occupancy is up from last year, and overall, the submarket is performing pretty well in the 80111 zip code. So honestly, 2 thumbs up in my opinion. Now moving on a little more east, we have the city of Aurora. Let's move on to there. And like Lakewood, city of Aurora is a big city. It's to the east and to the south of Denver, and there's a whole bunch of new development that's happening because over to the east is Kansas and a lot of plains, so there's just a lot of development that's going on in that area, especially when you look further east from the 470 freeway. However, unlike Lakewood, Aurora does allow short-term rentals. With some caveats, however. You cannot rent your property as an Airbnb if it is not your primary residence. And usually people get around this rule by operating their basement as the Airbnb, as long as they have a separate entrance and all of that good stuff. And I have that coined as house hacking. A city business license is required, so you can just go to auroragov.org, and there's a certain piece of the puzzle where you need to remit like 8% of the taxes in order to pay the city of Aurora to have an Airbnb on your property and operating as such. Now, what the city of Aurora does not tell you is that Airbnb takes some of your income and sets it aside and pays the city of Aurora on your behalf. And I have a client that actually owns and operates an Airbnb house hack in Aurora. And what he did was he paid the city of Aurora that 8%, not knowing that Airbnb does it for him. And in the end, the city of Aurora gave back that money to him because like, you're good. You have no balance on your account, so you are good to go. And now looking at the AirDNA numbers for Airbnb in Aurora, the numbers look okay. The revenue is up, the average daily rate is okay, but not much growth is happening here, which is actually okay if you want it to be a stable market. And I'm not exactly sure what the main reason is for that lower occupancy or maybe stabilized average daily rates, but maybe it's because some guests just don't want to stay in the basement while the owner lives in the main floor. I know when I was house hacking my Airbnb, I was living in the basement and having the main floor operate as the short-term rental, so I can get more money that way. And I will say, because Aurora is so large, like there's so many different neighborhoods within Aurora that you can have places that are more attractive than other places. So of course, I would suggest maybe checking out the property for yourself, see what the neighborhood is like, or have a professional do it. I would love to do that for you and just vouch it for myself. Because ultimately, the 3 rules of real estate are location, location, location. Going on from Aurora, we're now going to be going into the Westminster area, the north half of Denver. Westminster is on the way to Boulder, and it's right off the 36 freeway and also to the west of the 25. So it's actually a pretty attractive location if people need to go from Boulder and also to Denver. The city of Westminster is also attractive to the investor's eye because there's right now in 2023, there are no short-term regulations in that city. However, in 2024, things will change for the short-term rental regulations, but not by much. Westminster is actually taking some notes from Centennial and other bordering neighborhoods to see how they should operate their short-term rental laws, and it looks pretty positive for investors. So the owner will need to apply for a short-term rental and get a business license that way to operate that short-term rental. And the owner can operate and own a short-term rental as an investment property and not have to house hack it. Basically, they don't need to live in it in order to operate that short-term rental. And personally, I like seeing these regulations. It shows that the local jurisdiction has thought about this and they want to make sure that there's something in place so that, you know, nothing crazy comes up and it's not considered the Wild West of short-term rental regulations. And another positive with having regulations is that they've already thought about regulations and they're not considering more regulations, and it's very rare that they implement it even more and get it more strict. Now on to the AirDNA numbers for Westminster. The numbers look pretty good, and the key ingredient here is the rental demand. The average daily rate is actually lower from last year, but the occupancy and the total revenue has increased since last year. And of course, to see what your potential revenue might be, it is based on occupancy and average daily rate. So if you see that both of those numbers are pretty high and it's in a great location, usually it's a good criteria for a great investment as a short-term rental. And I underwrite all these properties for my clients. I have a subscription to AirDNA, and I want to make sure that you're making a great investment in those areas. So if you're ever curious about it, make sure you call me, text me, email me, whatever it might be, because I want to help you out in making a great investment here. I myself am investing in the greater Denver area, so you're in good company. And neighboring the city of Westminster to the south is the town of Arvada. There is a lot of investor attraction in the Arvada area based on its proximity to the mountains, to the 70, and also to downtown Denver. It's pretty central and it doesn't take very long to get to those places. And with all that in combination, it's actually a great location for a short-term rental. And in Arvada, you can operate a short-term rental as an investment property, so you do not need to consider it your primary residence. However, there are some things that you got to do in order to have that investment Airbnb In the city of Arvada, for example, you need a business license and a short-term rental license and some other things, including these. The short-term rental can only be occupied 240 days out of the 365-day calendar year. And one owner can operate up to 3 short-term rentals in the Arvada area. A short-term rental log will need to be documented at the end of the year and submitted to the city as proof that it was only occupied for those 66%-ish days out of the year. And now a lot of investors might look at that 240 days out of the calendar year can be occupied as a bad thing. And I would argue that having that 66% occupancy maximum might be more attractive for investors. So let me explain. Investors should not always want 100% occupancy. Usually when you get 100% occupancy, it just means that you are pricing it too low and people are seeing it as a budget price and you're attracting a certain type of person to come into your home. And with all those people coming into your home as well, you got more wear and tear and you just got a lot of things to do, and it's hard to get cleaners in there or handymen in there if something goes wrong if it's 100% occupied. And so when you're capped out at 66%, you can usually charge a little bit more to make sure that demand does not increase past 70% so that you can hit that 66% as maximum with a larger average daily rate. And plus, with that 66% occupancy, you can get in there if something goes wrong, repaint a wall, or whatever it might be. And with the AirDNA numbers in the city of Arvada, the numbers look pretty stable from last year. There was only a 5% increase or decrease depending if you're looking at total revenue, occupancy, or average daily rate from the last year, so it's pretty stable right now. And as you can see, that occupancy of 66% in that snapshot from AirDNA, it's pretty obvious and people are abiding by the rules there. And Arvada is a pretty large area, so make sure you know your neighborhoods and you talk to a professional about that as well, because if you're not used to that area, you might not want that specific neighborhood if you haven't seen it for yourself. And now we move on to the southeast corner of Denver called Littleton. Littleton does allow short-term rentals, but it needs to be your primary residence. There are licenses out there in Littleton that allow non-owner occupied permits for short-term rentals. However, those have been grandfathered in from previous to what the regulations or when the regulations have first started. So they're merely grandfathered in, and I don't think they're going to be implementing any more this day and age. The online application to get one of these short-term rental licenses is pretty simple. It's all online, and one of my clients that bought a place in Littleton and is using the Airbnb in the basement, it took maybe about a month and a half to get that permit. And of course, it's a little bit of a better situation than if you were to go through the city of Denver, because the city of Denver is known to be pretty slow on the permitting process. And now let's go into the AirDNA Littleton numbers. Let's go. It's actually looking pretty positive compared to last year. Annual revenue is up 11%, occupancy is up 12% per year, so things are looking good so far. And I think the main attraction here is that Littleton is maybe 15 minutes away from the Red Rocks Amphitheater, over in Morrison, a little bit more towards the west and towards the mountains. So it's honestly a great location for people that want to have that mountain access, Red Rocks access, and also maybe 25 minutes to the downtown Denver area. So it's a great location for people who are house hacking that want to implement the Airbnb, but not so much for investors that just want to have an Airbnb because they're not considering it their primary residence. However, I would argue that you could have it as a midterm rental. So maybe there's more on that later in a different video. Now on to the north side of Denver, approximately 15 minutes away to the north is the city of Thornton. Short-term rentals are allowed in Thornton, but of course the biggest inhibitor here is that it needs to be your primary residence. And along with that, you need to have a short-term rental license, a business license, and remit some numbers or remit some profit to allow for the taxes of the city of Thornton. And the current annual fee for a short-term rental license is about $180 per year. So like a bunch of the other neighborhoods and cities within the greater Denver area, it needs to be a primary residence. So just keep that in mind for Thornton. And with that being said, let's go to the Thornton AirDNA numbers. and it's honestly looking okay. And don't be too bummed about it has to be your primary residence issue, because the numbers aren't playing out as good as they did last year. Annual revenue is down 36% and occupancy is down 13%. And the average daily rate is down 6% from last year, so the rental demand is really high, but it's kind of tough to operate a short-term rental in the Thorton area. Moving on to the next place, just about 10 minutes north of Thornton is the city of North Glen. Before I get into North Glen, I want to let you know that there are some jurisdictions or neighborhoods or cities that I'm not going to be talking about just because they simply don't allow it. So while I don't waste your time with like not so great numbers or the investor situation for short-term rentals in the area is not great, I'd rather not waste your time and just talk about the ones that do allow it, except for the city of Lakewood that I mentioned at the beginning. Just wanted to set that standard straight, and here we are going into North Glen. In regards to short-term rentals, you are allowed to have them even if it is not your primary residence, so that makes it a little bit more attractive for investors. The application to have a short-term rental license is not that robust, so it's a lower barrier to entry here. It's about $175 for a new short-term rental, and to renew it for the next year, it's about $150. And to be sure, a lot of the rental licenses are good for 1 year, and then you'd have to renew it. And if you were to buy a property that is operating as a short-term rental, usually it is non-transferable, so you do have to apply it for yourself. So onto the AirDNA numbers from North Glen. The numbers actually look better than I thought. Occupancy is up 9%, but the average daily rate is down about 16%. However, down 16% to where it is now is about $204, so still not bad. What I would caution though is that before you start investing in the North Glen area, the rental demand is a little bit lower than the typical greater Denver neighborhood or city for short-term rentals. We've been seeing usually in the 80s or 90s in all these other cities, but for the city of North Glen, it's in the 60s. So just make sure you be cautious about that. And on to the last city, here we are at Denver, and I wanted to make sure that it's worth your while to go through the whole video, so stick around for this because there's some really cool tidbits in this one. Denver's STR situation or short-term rental situation is a common theme here. It needs to be your primary residence. And so for all of you investors, it seems like things are looking a little grim for investing in Denver for a short-term rental, right? Actually, not so fast. And this is the little tidbit that I want to give to you, my audience, on this situation. But not really, because I'm rewarding you for watching the video all the way through. There is a pocket of the city of Denver that does allow short-term rentals as an investment property. And that pocket of neighborhoods are considered to be in Adams County rather than Denver County. So this includes the neighborhoods of Sherwood, Twin Lakes, and Welby, just north of Denver, and it is considered unincorporated Adams County. And within those neighborhoods, there are no short-term regulations in those areas. And with that, there are some risks because there are no regulations, and it could happen in the future from local jurisdictions saying like, yes, we need to have it to be owner occupied, apply for rental licenses. All of that could happen in the future. And that is actually where my Airbnb is. And I'm not too worried about short-term rental regulations because if things get more strict in that area, I can easily shift my property from a short-term rental strategy to a medium-term rental strategy. And that's mainly because everything's already furnished. I already got beds in every bedroom, a day bed as well, TVs, linens, towels, kitchenware, and all that good stuff so that I can switch over to that medium-term rental strategy. So now let's look at the Denver AirDNA statistics. So occupancy is looking pretty good at 68% right now. The average daily rate is about $207 and the rental demand is 81 out of 100 in the city of Denver area. With all that being said, the competition is increasing in the Denver area. There's a whole bunch of listings, so you need to make sure that you're setting yourself apart from the rest of the competition. So with all this competition, how do you set yourself apart? After looking at the competition, I'm looking at things like pool tables, game rooms, ping pong tables, arcade sets, hot tubs, and movie theater rooms in the basement, and things like that. Also, one thing that I saw that was really cool is that if you convert your garage into, let's say, a big old gym with bench presses, squat racks, dumbbells, and things like that, you can attract a certain clientele that usually respect your place a little bit more than a typical guest. And themes are a great option too. If you wanted to be skiing themed or cabin themed or Red Rocks themed, music themed, whatever it might be, it is in your favor to create an experience for your guest. Because in the end, what is your main competition here? Other Airbnbs and hotels. Whew. All right, take a deep breath here because I know that was a lot of information. And the thing is that you don't have to wait until next week to wait for more information to know how to invest in the Denver area. What you can actually do is hit me up, send me a text, shoot me a call, send me an email, whatever it takes to get a hold of me, because I want to make sure you're making the right investment for your future, for your investment goals, and everything in between. So thank you so much for watching. I truly appreciate it, and I will see you guys next week.